Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
Echoes of the past. Abrasive static clawed from the calm, spitting out broken syllables. A digital death rattle. Jason fought the dial. His clenched jaw ached. Another burst, then recognition bloomed. A sequence of clicks and pauses Alistair had burned into his memory years ago. A distress beacon. More than just a code. It was Alistair's personal cipher, a signature woven into the signal that Jason's stomach plummeted. Alistair abhorred using the damn thing, he declared. If you ever hear this, Jason, presume I'm fertilizer and raise everything connected to me. He looped the mangled transmission, sieving the fragments. Extraction. Island. Perdition. The static devoured the rest. Perdition Island, a phantom tale among mercenaries. Where nightmares went to fester. Alistair, marooned there? Unthinkable, he slammed a fist against the console. The metal humming under the impact. Rage flared. A searing rush that cauterized the creeping dread. He pictured Alistair, rigidly upright in the training camp's yard, the sun slicing off his silver hair. Asterisk. Flashback. Jason, green and aching from another brutal drill, spat grit-laced blood. This is futile, he croaked, defiance thick in his voice. Just chasing our tails, shooting at stationary targets. Alistair remained calm, his voice steady. Instead, he crossed the distance, his stride precise, and retrieved Jason's discarded rifle. He disassembled it with practiced efficiency, the metallic clicks echoing in the stillness. Alistair, I'm serious. What's the point? The point, Jason, is mastery. Mastery over your reflexes, your tools, your psyche. You are a weapon, undeniably, but one without direction is a liability. You require discipline. He reassembled the rifle, movements economical and graceful. And a moral compass. A lethal edge demands a steady hand and lucid intent. Comprehend. Jason grunted, still sore and skeptical. Alistair sighed, a rare show of weariness. Very well, let's try a different approach. The ensuing weeks were a torment. Alistair subjected him to mental trials, dissecting scenarios, predicting outcomes, measuring consequences. He challenged Jason's premises, exposed his motivations, and forced him to confront his own inner demons. He instilled in him the value of life, not from sentiment, but from cold calculation. A corpse is a liability, he'd stated. A living being, even an adversary, is a potential asset. One evening, following a particularly grueling session, Alistair gifted him a dog-eared copy of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Read, he instructed simply. It might grant you insight. Jason, surprised, accepted the book. He grasped only fragments at the time, but the seeds of Alistair's lessons began to sprout. End flashback. Jason shook his head, banishing the memory. Perdition Island. Alistair would only be there if compromised. Someone had reached him. Someone formidable. He called up the island's coordinates on the holo display. A craggy volcanic outcrop wreathed in lethal currents materialized. Rumor claimed it was held by a cabal of ex-intelligence operatives, ghosts who had vanished from the system, absconding with their secrets. They used the island as a clandestine station, operating beyond legal constraints, immune from accountability. He knew Alistair's presence there was involuntary. He was on a mission, something that had made him enemies of the island's masters, individuals who trafficked in obliteration. He reached for his calm, punching in a secure frequency. Eva, I need all intel you have on Perdition Island. Owners, security, the whole shebang. Yesterday would be ideal. Eva's sharp, professional tone answered. Perdition Island? That's a death trap, Jason. Are you certain? Certain. Alistair's there. A pause hung between them, weighted with unspoken understanding. Eva knew Alistair's significance, the unpayable debt. Understood. I'll compile everything I can. But Jason, yeah, tread carefully. That place, it consumes and discards. He severed the connection, his gaze fixed on the looming silhouette of Perdition Island. He would go, he had to. Alistair had redeemed him, given him direction, led him from the abyss. He owed him his life. He began gathering his gear, the familiar heft of weaponry settling him. This wasn't solely a rescue. It was retribution. He would scour that island, atom by atom, if required. Alistair had taught him to harness disorder. Now, he would unleash it, he murmured. A vow, a promise, a threat. I'm coming, Alistair. Endure. The serpent's lair. Jason snapped the laptop closed, the sharp sound puncturing the stillness of his apartment. At 72 hours, Alistair had vanished 72 hours ago. An eternity. He raked his fingers through his already unruly hair, the acrid tang of day-old coffee clinging to his skin. The trail had gone frigid, almost non-existent. Alistair had seemingly evaporated. No digital breadcrumbs, no eyewitness accounts, simply nothing. His investigation began with retracing Alistair's last known steps. A low-key dinner at an Italian bistro, a late-night chess match at their usual haunt. Fruitless. It wasn't until he started dissecting Alistair's recent caseload that a flicker of hope ignited. The old man had been circling Victor Antonov, a shipping tycoon mired in rumors of illicit arms sales. Antonov possessed a dark reputation for making inconvenient people vanish. A starting point. Finally, then came the whispers, hushed tones about a cleaner. Someone Antonov employed when mere disappearance wasn't sufficient. A figure shrouded in mystery, known only as the Serpent. The moniker sent a shiver up Jason's spine. Every operative knew the tales. The Serpent was a wraith, a phantom assassin whose methods were as diverse as they were devastating, a chameleon, a rumor given form. Their true identity, motives, even gender, remained a complete enigma. He dredged up every file, every fragment of gossip, every scintilla of intelligence on the Serpent he could unearth. Each account painted a portrait of meticulous preparation and merciless execution. Point one recounted a corrupt politician discovered lifeless in his locked office, a single, exquisitely folded origami snake resting on his chest. Another detailed a high-ranking general felled by poison during a lavish state banquet, the sole indicator a faint, lingering aroma of almonds. The fragmented intelligence coalesced, pointing to a secluded island in the Aegean, a privately owned fortress, cloaked in mist and suspicion. Antonov's nerve center and, in all likelihood, Alistair's confinement. A natural redoubt, ringed by sheer cliffs and patrolled by heavily armed sentries. Satellite images revealed a labyrinthine structure of reinforced concrete and steel, a veritable sensory minefield. Motion detectors, thermal cameras, pressure plates. The works. Jason clicked through the images, his jaw clenched tight. It wasn't merely a holding cell. It was a death warrant waiting to be signed. He needed more than raw force. He needed a strategy. He leaned back, closing his eyes, almost hearing Alistair's calm, even tone, cutting through the din. Patience, Jason. Observe. Analyze. Target the fulcrum. The fulcrum. Where was it? He cycled back to the satellite photos, scrutinizing the topography, predominantly barren rock. The island did, however, possess a small, sheltered inlet on its western edge, too shallow for sizable vessels. But perhaps, just perhaps, he began plumbing the depths of the island's infrastructure, its power conduits, its communication web. He had to locate a weak spot, a chink in the Serpent's nigh-impregnable armor. A frontal assault would be sheer folly. The Serpent wouldn't grant him such an easy victory. The clock relentlessly counted down, each tick hammering home the reality of Alistair's dwindling margin for error. A wave of guilt crashed over Jason. He should have anticipated this. He should have shielded him. He lingered on a picture of Alistair, a rare and cherished smile gracing his face. Jason was forever in his debt. Alistair had rescued him from the gutter, transforming a street urchin with a penchant for violence into something more. He had instilled discipline, strategic thinking, and the imperative to wield his talents for good. Jason's gaze steeled, resolve hardening his features. He wouldn't let him down. He would infiltrate that fortress, confront the Serpent, and extract Alistair. He simply required a modicum more time, one final piece of the puzzle. He opened a fresh browser window, initiating a search for maritime currents. The cove on the western flank. If his hunch proved accurate, a possibility presented itself. A long shot, yet a possibility nonetheless. The Serpent may be a legend, a maestro of death, but even legends harbored vulnerabilities. Jason intended to expose each and every one. He would become the tidal surge that crashes against the island's defenses, unwavering until Alistair was secure. Assembling the team. The neon sign of Bites flickered erratically above the door, casting a sickly green glow onto the rain-slicked alley. Jason pushed the door open, the bell above jangling a discordant melody. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale coffee and ozone. Stacks of obsolete computer parts threatened to topple over in every corner, a chaotic testament to Marcus's singular obsession. "Marcus!" Jason called out, his voice barely audible above the whirring of a dozen fans. That a figure detached itself from the shadows, illuminated by the glow of a monitor displaying lines of complex code. Marcus, a wiry man with perpetually disheveled hair and thick glasses perched precariously on his nose, peered at him. "Jason? What brings you to my humble abode? I thought you were busy." "Things have changed," Jason said, cutting to the chase. "I need your help." Marcus raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Help? From me? I thought I was persona non grata after that incident with the Bulgarian elections." Jason sighed. "That was 5 years ago, Marcus. And you saved countless lives exposing their corruption. Besides, your skills are unique. I need you to crack a system. Impenetrable, military grade." Marcus's eyes widened, a spark of excitement igniting within them. "Intriguing. Tell me more." Jason outlined the situation. The island, the prison, the security systems. Marcus listened intently, his fingers already twitching with anticipation. This is a challenge I can't refuse." Next stop, the Crimson Dragon Motorcycle Club. The air here was thick with cigarette smoke and the rumble of engines. Leather-clad figures eyed Jason warily as he navigated the crowded room. He found Isabel by the pool table, a blur of motion as she sunk the 8-ball with a satisfying crack. "Izzy?" Jason said, his voice barely audible above the din. Isabel Moreau straightened up, her fiery red hair cascading down her back. A mischievous grin spread across her face. "Jason Statham. What brings you to my neck of the woods?" "Looking for a little excitement." "More than a little," Jason replied, matching her grin. He knew Isabel thrived on adrenaline. "I need your particular talents." "Explosions, you mean?" Isabel asked, her eyes gleaming. "I'm your girl. What needs blowing up?" He told her about the reinforced concrete walls, the surveillance cameras, the heavily guarded perimeter. Isabel's grin widened with each detail. "This sounds like fun. When do we start?" Back at his safe house, a sparsely furnished apartment overlooking the docks, Jason spread out the blueprints of the island prison on the table. Marcus, fueled by caffeine and nervous energy, was already hunched over his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Isabel leaned over Jason's shoulder, tracing the outline of the walls with a red-lacquered fingernail. "Okay," Jason said, his voice firm. "Marcus, you'll handle the security system. Disable the cameras, open the doors, create a diversion." "Child's play," Marcus mumbled, his eyes glued to the screen. "I'll have them thinking a flock of pigeons is trying to infiltrate the mainframe." "Izzy," Jason continued, "you'll take care of the perimeter. Breach the outer wall, create a path." Isabel grinned. "My kind of party. I've got just the thing to make a nice, big hole. Fireworks. Guaranteed to get their attention." Jason pointed to a heavily guarded section of the blueprints. "That's where they're holding him. That's where we need to be." He looked at Marcus, then at Isabel. "This isn't going to be easy. There will be risks. Are you both in?" Marcus didn't even look up from his laptop. "I'm already halfway in the system." Isabel met Jason's gaze, her eyes blazing with determination. "Let's blow this popsicle stand." Jason nodded, a grim satisfaction settling within him. He had his team. It was time to bring his mentor home. Breaching the fortress. The inflatable raft, black as pitch, bumped gently against the volcanic shore. Jason, dripping seawater, hauled it further onto the coarse, black sand. The air hung thick and heavy, smelling of brine and sulfur. "Codebreaker, systems down?" he rasped, already scanning the treeline. A muffled voice crackled through his earpiece. "Give me a minute, Statham." This isn't your grandma's dial-up modem that they've got layers. Like an onion, only digital, and probably booby-trapped. Isabel, her face smeared with camouflage paint, emerged from the water, hefting a waterproof pack. Hurry up. Genius that I'm itching to blow something up. She grinned, but her eyes were hard, reflecting the faint moonlight. Jason ignored the banter, his senses on high alert. This island fortress, rumored to be impenetrable, was designed to be a death trap. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every rustle of leaves a potential alarm. The salty tang of the air did little to mask the metallic undercurrent he knew came from automated gun turrets, minutes stretched into an eternity. Jason paced the narrow beach, his boots crunching on the black sand as he checked his silenced pistol, the movement economical and precise. Isabel fidgeted, tossing a small, shaped charge from hand to hand. Finally, Codebreaker's voice, now clear and triumphant, filled their ears. Jackpot! Perimeter surveillance neutralized. Cameras are blind, motion sensors are dormant, and pressure plates are unpressured. For now, don't dawdle. Showtime? Isabel breathed, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. She led the way, moving with a surprising grace through the tangled vegetation. Jason followed, his every step deliberate, his hand never far from his weapon. They reached the outer wall, a monstrous edifice of reinforced concrete topped with razor wire that it seemed impregnable. This is it, Isabel said, pointing to a weak point near the base, a section where the concrete appeared slightly weathered. Plant the charge here. Stand back. Jason helped her secure the explosive, his gaze sweeping the surroundings. The silence was unnerving, too quiet. Isabel armed the detonator. 5 seconds. See you on the other side. She sprinted back towards Jason, diving behind a thick cluster of ferns. The explosion was deafening. The ground trembled as the shaped charge ripped through the concrete, creating a jagged hole just large enough to squeeze through. Debris rained down around them. Before the dust had even settled, a siren wailed in the distance, shattering the stillness. Red lights flickered to life atop the wall, cutting through the darkness. So much for undetected, Jason muttered. They were bound to notice eventually, Isabel retorted, brushing dust from her clothes. Let's move. They scrambled through the breach, finding themselves in a narrow corridor between the outer wall and an inner perimeter fence. Two guards, alerted by the explosion, rounded the corner, their rifles raised. Jason reacted instantly. He fired 2 quick shots, the silenced bullets finding their marks. Both guards dropped without a sound. Clean, he said, holstering his pistol. But that's just the beginning. They know we're here now. A volley of shots rang out from the other side of the inner fence. They ducked for cover behind a stack of crates, bullets pinging off the metal. Codebreaker. Status report. Jason yelled into his comm. Internal security systems are still live. They're locking down the compound. You need to get through that fence, fast. Isabel grinned. My pleasure. She pulled another shaped charge from her pack. This one's a little bigger. Traps within traps. A scarlet line bisected the corridor, a glaring wound in the inky blackness. Curtain up, Jason rasped, throat tight. He'd navigated laser defenses before, but this was a beast of a different breed. The crimson threads throbbed, writhed, an erratic ballet of death. Think you can unravel it? Codebreaker? Fuse inquired, her gaze locked on the intricate lattice. Marcus, face illuminated by the glow of his wrist console, demurred. Forget it. Too many layers. Serpents upped his game. No doubt we're doing this the hard way. He adjusted his glasses. Finesse, agility, and a prayer. Jason initiated the dance, a paragon of controlled fluidity. He slipped through the gaps, a living phantom, anticipating the light's jagged path. Fuse mirrored his movements, a blur of kinetic energy, a force of nature. A lone drop of perspiration slid down her temple as she cleared a low-sitting emitter with a silent bound. So graceful. Marcus grumbled, voice laced with strain. He was, to put it mildly, earthbound. He edged forward gingerly, brow furrowed in intense study, murmuring equations under his breath. A beam kissed his sleeve. Blast it! They gained the far side, lungs heaving. Next time you're packing the climbing gear. Fuse retorted, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. Their reprieve proved fleeting. The corridor gave way to a sprawling chamber, checkered with stark black and white tiles. Pressure sensitive, Jason declared, his eyes sweeping the expanse. One misstep. The unspoken hung heavy in the air. Fuse plucked a pebble, lofting it onto a white square that a low thrum vibrated through the floor. Confirmative. She tossed another onto ebony. Silence. Looks like white is the way to go, she commented, lost in thought. But I guarantee there's a catch. Marcus was already mapping the room with a specialized scanner. There's a sequence, a pattern etched into the floor. Just give me a moment. Jason's hawkish eyes traced the room. Time's a luxury we can't afford. The chamber remained hushed, yet he sensed a gathering storm, the prickling awareness of surveillance. Serpent was toying with them. Eureka! Marcus proclaimed, gesturing to nearly invisible scratchings etched in the wall. A Fibonacci sequence. Each tile corresponds to a number. Fuse took the lead, her footfalls confident on the designated platforms. Jason shadowed her, every nerve screaming he trusted Marcus's decryption. But his gut instincts held greater sway. Midway through their traverse, the very ground began to shudder. What's happening? Fuse shouted, her voice barely cutting through the rising clamor. Secondary trigger. Marcus returned the cry. He knew we'd cracked the code. The tiles ignited with malevolent red light, one by one, tracing an altogether different pattern. The air sizzled with contained power. Adapt! Jason roared, shoving Fuse ahead. He wrestled a hefty metal container into place on a secure tile. Use it as a stepping stone. Jump! They clambered onto their makeshift haven as the remaining tiles erupted in a blinding spectacle of light and pulverized porcelain. The crate pitched violently, but held firm. We're not out of the fire, Jason stated, his voice rough. He noticed a minute scoring on the wall near the entrance. Almost imperceptible. He traced it with a finger, registering the smooth, frigid feel. Microcameras. He's been watching our every move. Marcus' face drained of color. He anticipated everything. The lasers, the pressure plates. These were custom built for us. Jason fixed his gaze on the miniature lens, his jaw ticking. Traps layered within traps. He wanted us to succeed, to savor the knowledge of his dominion. He paused, his eyes hardening, but he missed one crucial element. Which is? Fuse inquired, a hint of apprehension coloring her tone. Our sheer refusal to quit, Jason replied, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. Let's illuminate him regarding our capabilities. He vaulted off the crate, landing soundlessly on the comparatively stable floor. Codebreaker, stay with me. Fuse, secure R6. The stakes had been raised. This was no longer simply about rescuing a mentor. It had become a personal vendetta. The Serpent had committed a fatal error. He'd underestimated Jason Statham. The ambush. The air hung thick and humid, each breath a labored effort. Jason led the way, his senses stretched taut, the suppressed tension in the corridor almost a tangible thing. Marcus, fiddling with a modified EMP grenade, brought up the rear, muttering about signal dampeners and Faraday cages. Isabel, ever restless, scanned the flanks, her hand never straying far from the grip of her silenced pistol. Then the lights went out. Darkness slammed down, absolute and sudden, punctuated only by the sharp crack of gunfire. Muzzle flashes erupted, painting fleeting, chaotic images of the corridor. Bulkheads, exposed wiring, and the grim faces of Serpent's enforcers emerging from concealed doorways. Ambush! Jason roared, his voice barely audible over the escalating din. He dropped to a crouch, returning fire with controlled bursts, targeting the nearest threats, the air filled with the acrid smell of burnt powder and the metallic tang of blood. Isabel cursed, a string of rapid-fire French expletives. As a stray round ricocheted off the wall inches from her head, she returned fire, her movements fluid and deadly, taking down two figures before diving for cover behind an overturned crate. Marcus, surprisingly agile for a man more at home with keyboards than combat, scrambled for cover, fumbling with the EMP grenade. "Give me a second," he yelled, his voice tight with panic. The firefight intensified. The narrow corridor amplified the noise, creating a disorienting cacophony of gunfire, shouts, and the clang of metal on metal. Jason moved with a brutal efficiency, his training taking over. Each shot was precise, each movement calculated. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind of controlled violence. Then Isabel screamed. Jason twisted around, his heart leaping into his throat. Isabel lay on the ground, clutching her leg, a dark stain spreading across her fatigues. "I'm hit," she gasped, her face pale with pain. The world seemed to slow. Jason saw it all with stark clarity. The blood, the fear in Isabel's eyes, the relentless advance of Serpent's forces. He knew they couldn't stay. They were pinned down, outgunned, and now wounded. "Marcus, cover us," Jason barked, already moving towards Isabel. He scooped her up, ignoring her protests, and dragged her towards a small alcove. "Jason, what are you doing? Leave me," Isabel pleaded, her voice strained. "Not a chance," he growled, his jaw tight. He quickly assessed her wound. It was bad, but not immediately life-threatening. Still, she needed medical attention, and fast. He knew what he had to do. "Marcus, status on that grenade," Jason yelled, his eyes scanning the corridor. Almost there," Marcus replied, his voice ragged. He threw himself behind a stack of crates, frantically adjusting the settings on the device. "Get out of here, Jason. Save Alistair," Isabel cried, desperation lacing her voice. Jason knelt beside her, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice low and firm. "But I can't stay here either. Marcus will get you out. I have to go on." He ripped a piece of cloth from his own shirt and tightly bound it around Isabel's wound. "Hold tight. Marcus will be here soon." He looked at Marcus, his eyes conveying the weight of his decision. "Get her to safety. I'm trusting you with this." Marcus met his gaze, his usual awkwardness replaced with a grim determination. He nodded, his knuckles white as he gripped his pistol. "Go. I've got her." Jason rose, steeling himself. He took one last look at Isabel, a silent promise etched on his face. Then he turned and charged back into the corridor, a one-man army against the forces of the Serpent. The EMP grenade detonated behind him with a blinding flash and a deafening roar, momentarily disrupting the enemy's advance. Jason seized the opportunity, using the chaos as cover. His focus narrowed to a single, unwavering point. Alistair. He would not fail. The reunion. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and ozone. Jason slammed the butt of his silenced pistol into the face of the last guard, the man collapsing against the reinforced steel door with a wet thud. He didn't bother checking for a pulse. Time was a luxury he couldn't afford. He punched the access code Alistair had slipped him months ago into the keypad beside the door. A green light flickered, followed by the heavy clunk of the locking mechanism disengaging. He shoved the door open, his senses on high alert. The cell was small, barely bigger than a walk-in closet. A single, bare bulb cast a harsh, unforgiving light on the interior, and there, slumped against the far wall, was Alistair. "Alistair!" Jason rushed to his side, dropping to his knees. Alistair's eyes flickered open, focusing with difficulty. His face was gaunt, bruised, and a thin trickle of blood had dried on his temple. He tried to smile, but it came out as a pained grimace. "Jason," he rasped, his voice weak. "You came." "Of course I came. What did you expect?" Jason gently helped him sit up straighter, wincing at the man's obvious frailty. "Damn it, Alistair, what have they done to you?" "Enough?" Alistair whispered, waving a dismissive hand. "It doesn't matter. What matters is getting the information out." Jason pulled a flask of water from his jacket and held it to Alistair's lips. He drank greedily, some of the water spilling down his chin. "Easy," Jason said, lowering the flask. "Conserve your strength. We're getting you out of here. Then you can tell me everything." Alistair shook his head. his eyes filled with a desperate urgency. No, Jason, there isn't time. They know I know that's why. That's why they're keeping me alive. TOC who comes for me. Jason's jaw tightened. He should have known. This rescue mission was never going to be clean. Who knows? Alistair? Who's behind this? Alistair coughed, a rattling sound that sent a shiver down Jason's spine. He reached out, gripping Jason's arm with surprising strength. Senator Thornton. He's the linchpin. Thornton? The Foreign Relations Committee chairman? Jason couldn't believe what he was hearing. Thornton was a pillar of the establishment, a man admired and respected by many. He's been selling secrets for years. Alistair continued, his voice growing weaker. Military intelligence, technological blueprints, anything that would bring him a profit. The prison, this island, it's all funded by the illicit deals. A black site where they can bury anyone who gets too close. Jason felt a cold fury rising inside him. He had suspected corruption, but this went far deeper than he could have imagined. What proof do you have? Documents, Alistair said, his breathing becoming more labored. Coded files. I hid them before they caught me. Inside a Swiss bank account. The key is. He trailed off, his grip on Jason's arm loosening. Alistair, stay with me. Jason shook him gently. What's the key? Alistair's eyes fluttered, his gaze unfocused. He mumbled something unintelligible. Panic began to set in. He couldn't lose him now, not after everything. Alistair, think. What's the key to the account? Jason pressed, his voice tight with urgency. Alistair's eyes focused again, a flicker of recognition in them. He opened his mouth to speak, but a sudden violent spasm racked his body. He arched his back, gasping for air, then went limp. Alistair. Jason checked for a pulse, his heart pounding in his chest. Nothing, he was gone. Rage, pure and unadulterated, washed over Jason. They had silenced him, just as they silenced countless others. But they wouldn't silence him. He would expose Thornton and bring down the entire corrupt network, even if it meant tearing the world apart. He gently closed Alistair's eyes, a silent vow etched on his face. I won't let you down, he whispered. He rose to his feet, his senses sharp, the weight of Alistair's revelation pressing down on him. He had a mission now, a purpose that burned brighter than ever. He would escape this island, retrieve the evidence, and make them all pay. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed in the corridor. They were coming. Jason gripped his pistol, his knuckles white. The hunt was on. Serpent's embrace. The jungle air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket clinging to Jason and Alistair as they scrambled through the undergrowth. Every rustle of leaves, every chirp of an unseen insect, ratcheted up the tension. They were close. Jason could feel it, close to the coastline, close to the stolen boat that represented their freedom. Alistair, despite the bullet wound in his shoulder, moved with surprising agility, his face grim but determined. Head down, he rasped, his voice barely audible above the din of the jungle. They'll be expecting us to break for the shore. His warning was a hair's breadth too late. A figure dropped from the dense canopy above, landing silently between them and the path ahead. Serafina Volkov, the serpent, her dark eyes glinting with predatory amusement. She wore a tailored combat suit that seemed to meld with the shadows, a stark contrast to the crude fatigues of the island's guards. A thin, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips. Leaving so soon, gentlemen? Her voice was soft, almost melodic, yet laced with a chilling edge. I haven't even had the chance to properly thank you for the entertainment. Jason cursed under his breath. He'd hoped to avoid this confrontation, to slip away unseen. But the serpent clearly wasn't one for letting loose ends dangle. He pushed Alistair gently behind him. Stay back, he growled, his fists clenching. Serafina chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. How chivalrous. But misplaced, I assure you. Your friend is already a liability. Without another word, she moved out a blur of motion, too fast for the eye to properly follow. Jason barely had time to react, raising his arms to deflect a lightning-fast kick aimed at his head. The force of the blow reverberated through his bones, numbing his arm. He stumbled back, momentarily stunned. "Southpaw, Jason," Alistair shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. "She favors her right. Keep her off balance." Jason regained his footing, his mind racing that Alistair's tactical insights were invaluable. A crucial advantage in this deadly game. He shifted his stance, leading with his left, forcing Serafina to adjust. She danced around him, a viper coiling and striking. Each blow was precise, calculated to inflict maximum damage. Jason parried, blocked, and occasionally landed a blow of his own, but Serafina seemed to anticipate every move. Her movements fluid and unpredictable. "She's using a modified Wing Chun," Alistair called out, analyzing her movements. "Close the distance. Break her stance." Jason pressed the attack. Ignoring the searing pain in his ribs, he lunged forward, grabbing Serafina's arm, trying to disrupt her flow. She twisted, using his momentum against him, attempting to throw him off balance. He resisted, muscles straining, digging his heels into the earth. "Now!" Alistair yelled. "Sweep the leg." Jason obeyed instinctively, his foot connecting with Serafina's ankle. She stumbled. Momentarily thrown off her stride, he seized the opportunity, throwing a haymaker, connecting with her jaw. The serpent staggered back, her composure finally cracking. A flicker of surprise, even anger, flashed across her face. She spat out a mouthful of blood, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Impressive," she hissed, her voice laced with venom. "But hardly enough." She reached behind her back, her hand disappearing beneath her jacket. Jason knew, with a sickening certainty, that the knives were coming. That he had to end this, and end it now. Justice served. The serpent's size spun, a silver blur deflecting the last of Jason's blows. He'd expected elegance, a dancer's grace, but her style was brutal efficiency, each movement designed to maim. He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple, stinging his eye. He flicked it away, his focus sharpening. He wasn't going to win this by playing defense. He feinted high, then dove low, sweeping her legs out from under her. She landed hard, the air whooshing from her lungs, but recovered with unnatural speed, rolling away before he could capitalize. She was good. Damn good. "Enough games," Jason growled, his voice tight with exertion. "Who hired you?" She spat on the polished floor. "You think I'd betray a client?" Her voice was a silken rasp, devoid of emotion. He didn't waste time arguing. He launched himself forward, a whirlwind of fists and elbows. He fought with the single-minded purpose he always brought to bear when Alistair was on the line. He felt a satisfying crunch as his fist connected with her jaw. She staggered, momentarily stunned. He pressed his advantage, disarming her with a sharp kick that sent one of the sighs skittering across the floor. The other, she still gripped tight. He grabbed her wrist, twisting until her knuckles turned white, forcing the weapon from her grasp. "Tell me," he roared, his face inches from hers. "Who hired you?" Her eyes, cold and black as obsidian, flickered with something akin to fear. "Senator Thornton," she hissed, the words laced with venom. "He wants Reed silenced." Jason released her, the information hitting him like a physical blow. Thornton, he should have known. The politician's fingerprints were all over Alistair's abduction. He could kill her. End it right here, prevent her from ever hurting anyone again. But Alistair's code, the one he drilled into Jason's head years ago, echoed in his ears. Asterisk justice, not vengeance. Asterisk. He kicked the remaining sigh away, then delivered a swift, debilitating blow to her solar plexus. She crumpled, gasping for air. "I'm not going to kill you," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But if you ever come near Alistair again." He left the threat unfinished, letting it hang heavy in the air. He turned and ran, leaving the serpent writhing on the floor. He had to get Alistair out of here. He found Alistair where he'd left him, patiently waiting. "Thornton," Jason said, by way of explanation. Alistair nodded, his expression grim. "I suspected as much." The man's ambition knows no bounds. They moved quickly, retracing their steps through the labyrinthine corridors. The alarms were still blaring, but the guards seemed hesitant to engage, likely fearing the serpent's wrath. They reached the docks, finding Marcus and Isabel waiting anxiously by the speedboat. Isabel threw her arms around Jason, her relief palpable. "We thought you were dead." "Almost," Jason replied, his gaze sweeping the island one last time. "Let's get out of here." Marcus gunned the engine, the speedboat slicing through the dark water as the island receded into the distance. Alistair stood at the bow, his silhouette stark against the rising sun. "Thornton will not get away with this," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "I will expose him and his entire network of corruption." Jason stood beside him, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. "He'll retaliate," he said, stating the obvious. "He'll come after you." "I'm aware of the risks," Alistair replied, his gaze unwavering. "But some things are worth fighting for." Jason knew that look in Alistair's eyes. He wouldn't back down. He'd always been a stubborn idealist. "Then I'll be ready," Jason said, his voice firm. "He wants a war, he's got one." He thought of Thornton, safe in his gilded office, pulling strings and manipulating lives. That safety was about to be shattered. Jason would make sure of it. He would be Alistair's shield. This wasn't just about rescuing a friend. It was about justice, and Jason Statham was about to deliver it.